We got a huge game. I mean, this stretch coming up now over the next 3 weeks, it's a lot of fun. It's, I kind of put it in the title. This is the biggest game in 35 years for the Miami Dolphins. And not because this would be the biggest game you've won in 30. Like I told you 2 years ago, watching Tua come off the bench against Baltimore with Brian suck-ass Flores and his crappy-ass coaching staff, for Tua to win that game was much more impressive than, the next 3 games. Well, maybe not the Buffalo game. But my point is that this is more about the macro. You know how when we talk about investments, we always talk macro, we don't talk micro, because micro really doesn't give you the real picture, especially for those of us that are long-term investors. We're not rich, that kind of stuff. So the macro picture of all of this is that these are the biggest 3 weeks of the Dolphins franchise history in the last 35 years, because over 35 years, they were building to nothing. Okay? The Jay Ajayi year didn't mean shit. You weren't going to do anything anyway in the playoff. The 11-5 and the Wildcat didn't mean shit. It was a novelty. You were a nothing team that was just sneaking into the playoffs. The Jimmy Johnson era, you were building absolutely nothing. The Dave Wannstedt era, you weren't building shit. It was just the team was what it was, and it wasn't going anywhere big because it didn't have the proper leadership and the proper talent it needed all the way around and balance and everything else. This is the real deal. This is the real deal. The last time we had something like this was in the early 90s, but you had to deal with the Bills. And the Bills were just better, period. End of story. There's no discussion there. That was one of the greatest football teams of all time, even though they didn't win a championship. So this is why it means something, because these games will catapult you into the playoffs, will give you positioning that you've never had in so many decades, because now you're talking about fighting for a number 1 seed. This is the biggest moment of the Dolphin organization in the last 35 years. Because this is the last time in the early 90s was when you actually were building something that you had legitimate. And, of course, you had Shula and you had Marino and you had Webb and you had Sims and Clayton and Duper and Marco Coleman and Troy Vincent and, Tim Bowens and all. You know what I'm talking about, okay? So, those of you that are old enough and you lived that era, you know what I'm talking about. And we have finally come full circle. Okay? Not that this Cowboy win would be the greatest win in 35 years. No, not at all. But what these next 3 weeks mean, Miami has not been able to play with that kind of season on the line, with that kind of defining moments on the line, which is what's happening to the Miami Dolphins over the next 3 weeks. These are defining moments in your organization. Have you turned the corner? Do you now want to become an elite organization from here on out? Or do you just want to be that organization that just hangs around and is barely 500 and once in a blue moon you sneak into the playoffs? You know what I'm talking about, right? Young Dolphin fan? That's all you've ever been, right? Young Dolphin fan? Well, young Dolphin fan deserves a hell of a lot more. Young Dolphin fan deserves a lot of winning over the next 3 weeks. Young Dolphin fan deserves the number 1 seed, because old Dolphin fan like yours truly has experienced that. And I'm seeing that this is it right here. This is the first time that I feel in decades that this team actually has something incredibly tangible to acquire over the next 3 weeks. It's more than just a culture change. It's about becoming a winning organization. And the only way you do it is to be successful over the next 3 weeks. and it has to start on Sunday at 4:25. Got to get it done with the Dallas Cowboys. All right? I'm as excited as it gets, dude. Good moment for the team.
This is the Big O Show.